Okay. So good morning, and thank you for joining us. My name is Casey Bruce White, and I'm the Director of Communications at the ACLU of Florida. This morning, the ACLU of Florida, Greater Miami Chapter, and Valiente, Carollo, and McElligott, PLLC, filed a lawsuit on behalf of 3 individuals, Octavia Yearwood, McGriff, and Rodney Jackson, whose First Amendment right to free speech was violated by the City of Miami Beach after city officials ordered the removal of Rodney Jackson's painting depicting Raymond Herisse, an art installation in the city. Raymond Herisse was a Haitian American man who was fatally shot by Miami Beach police in 2011. In 2019, our clients, Octavia Yearwood and McGriff, were commissioned by the City of Miami Beach to create a series of art installations to display on Miami Beach during that year's Memorial Day weekend. The city's project, ReFrame Miami Beach, was created to promote conversations about race and address racial injustice in Miami Beach. As we know, the City of Miami Beach has a long history in regards to segregation and the treatment of Black people. So joining me today to discuss this litigation are Alan Levine, our co-counsel and longtime civil rights lawyer specializing in First Amendment cases. He will offer remarks about the constitutional violations that occurred. McGriff, an art programmer for the 2019 ReFrame Miami Beach project, who will offer remarks on the purpose and impact of the project. Octavia Yearwood, an art programmer and art curator for the 2019 project, who will offer remarks on the importance of uplifting Black artists and stories. Rodney Jackson, a visual artist for the project, he will offer remarks on the decision to create the portrait of Raymond Herisse. Matthew McElligott, attorney at Valiente, Carollo, and McElligott PLLC, and co-counsel, he will offer remarks about the importance of this case in this moment. And we're also joined by Shannon Ligon, an attorney with Pretty Smart Law, and Raymond Herisse's family attorney. She will also offer remarks about the importance of this case in this moment. So we will take questions at the end of the press conference after everyone's remarks. And just a reminder that this call is being recorded. And with that, I'll pass it over to Alan.
Casey talked about the purpose of ReFrame to spark a conversation about race relations. Let me say a couple of words about why that conversation about Miami's history was so urgent at the time and why all of this resonates so painfully with the events playing out in the streets across the country. Miami Beach has a history of segregation that is comparable to the history of any major city in the Deep South. During most of the 20th century, it had enforced rigid Jim Crow laws. Black people were not allowed to live on the beach or swim in city beaches. Black workers had to register with the police, were required to wear identity cards. Interracial couples were arrested. Black entertainers were not welcome at Miami Beach hotels until the late 50s, and even then were not allowed to stay at those hotels. So it's an ugly history, but it's also not the distant past. Memorial Day weekend has become known as Urban Beach Weekend. It's a weekend when tens of thousands of young people, mostly men and women of color, come to Miami Beach to celebrate the Memorial Day weekend. And it's a weekend that has been characterized by aggressive police enforcement, racialized violence, subject of criticism among civic groups across South Florida. So it's against that background last April that Miami Beach commissioned this conversation, which on its face was a great idea. And they enlisted 2 curators, Yearwood McGriff and Octavia Yearwood, to put together 5 art installations on the beach, one of which was to be on Lincoln Road. The overall theme of ReFrame Miami Beach was trust as currency. The expectation articulated by City Manager Morales was that the conversations would be about inclusion, Blackness, and relationships through artistic media. Those were Morales's words. And so the expectation of all of our clients in this case was that everybody wanted an open and honest history. The curators created an exhibit on Lincoln Road. It was called ICU2, and it was about how propaganda and misinformation have compromised us. There were 5 exhibits in that installation, one of which was a painting, a large painting by Rodney Jackson called Memorial to Raymond Herisse. Next to the painting was a placard that described the events of his murder at the hands of the police. He was killed in a hail of 116 bullets. The exhibit went up on a Friday, and on Saturday, a city employee contacted one of the curators and said, "Take it down." She responded negatively, and he said, "If you don't take it down, the entire installation on Lincoln Road will be closed." So under duress, they closed down the exhibit. A sign was put up where the painting was saying that this art was removed at the request of the Miami Beach police. So what does this amount to in constitutional terms? The defendants will say, this isn't censorship. It's a First Amendment violation. They'll say no. Jackson is free to display his painting if he wants, wherever it is. At a public forum some months after these events, Mayor Gelber appeared and didn't say that this art did not suit the purpose of ReFrame Miami Beach. Rather, he said, and he quoted Morales because it was Morales's order to take it down. Morales said, "I don't like it. I pay for it. I'm taking it down." And Gelber said, "I agree." So the defendants will say, well, we don't have to fund art that we don't want. Jackson, can display it any place, but it's our dime and we don't have to pay for it. The truth is, it's not his dime. It's all of ours dime. It's the public dime. It's public money. And it is perfectly clear that public money cannot be allocated based on whether or not public officials approve of somebody's point of view. 2 cases have stood for that point in recent years. 30 years ago, the city of Miami sought to close the Cuban Art Museum, which was on city property, because they displayed works of artists who were insufficiently anti-Castro. The case went to court, and the court said this is a flat-out First Amendment violation. 20 years ago in New York City, then Mayor Rudy Giuliani got upset about an exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum. He called it disgusting and offensive to him, and he tried to terminate their lease. The case again went to court. The court again said this was a First Amendment violation. We're confident that both of those cases point to the result in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. We will now hear from Jared McGriff.
Hi, my name is Jared. I was one of the programmers for the ReFrame project. We were commissioned by the city of Miami Beach to design and execute an art program during Memorial Day weekend 2019. Together, we approached this project with a question: how can art and culture step in as a mediator to tell stories from different points of view? Given the fraught relationship between the city of Miami Beach and Black communities, especially during Memorial Day weekend, we agreed on programming that would spark a crucial conversation about inclusion, Blackness, trust, and surveillance. We saw this as an opportunity for Black artists to engage the community on these topics and explore how art could shift perspectives, provide context, and bring people together. We partnered with several Miami Beach cultural institutions, including the Bass Museum, FIU's Miami Beach Urban Studios, and the Colony Theater. The exhibition I See You Too, co-curated by Octavia, who you'll hear from next, explored ideas around how misinformation and propaganda has compromised Black communities. This exhibition, and particularly the memorial to Raymond Herisse, was censored, showed that the city was unwilling to collaborate with us in good faith, and their desire to subordinate the ideas of Black people in the interest of hiding unfavorable facts about the police. So the exhibition in general was started to engage this on this conversation and engage the community about these topics, and due to the censorship, we were unable to do so.
Thank you, Jared. We will now hear from Octavia Yearwood. Octavia, you're still muted.
All right, here we are. My name is Octavia Yearwood, and I'm a co-curator on the ReFrame project. As it relates to uplifting Black artists, when we conceptualized this project, we were excited to celebrate the contributions of arts and artists of color on the beach in particular. In the earlier years, artists who worked on the beach couldn't even stay on the beach after they performed, they had to leave. The city of Miami Beach and America often invisibilize and mute these contributions. And really the way that they approach Black people coming onto the beach during Memorial Day weekend is often looked at as a burden. So we curated exhibitions and pop-ups that would welcome them. We use arts, we use culture, and we use history to do this. And the work that talks about our story from our own mouths are paramount. And this is why it's continuously important to uplift those things.
Thank you, Octavia. We will now hear from Rodney Jackson.
Hi, my name is Rodney Jackson, or Rock Jackson. It was through a collaboration of Naomi Guerrero, Lonnie Johnson, and myself that we came up with the concept to include an image of Raymond Herisse, or Herisse. And since it was a benchmark case that changed Miami Beach policy, we felt as though it was important to include an image of Raymond in the show. And so my part in it was to turn the concept into a visual piece of work, and I created the illustration that was censored.
Thank you, Rodney. We will now hear from Matthew McElliott.
Good morning, everybody. I think there's pretty obvious parallels, or at least connections between what occurred with the censorship on Miami Beach and the protests that we've seen going on in the past weeks all across the country. There is an unfortunate history of censorship of Black voices, specifically with respect to police violence. This case, we think, illustrates the importance of the need to have these forums, to have these spaces, to have the conversations that artwork and that exhibit was intended to have. I think the censorship in this case has to be viewed and understood in a larger context, which is a long-standing campaign to silence and delegitimize the movement against racialized police violence, specifically toward young Black males. It seems to us to be a rather obvious consequence that when you repeatedly prevent peaceful expression, it boils over. And we've seen that. It's boiling over into the streets from Milwaukee to Miami and every other city, large city in the nation. And we've also seen a uniform and violent crackdown by the police. And I think the importance of this case is it's hard to fight censorship in the streets. When you're out protesting and the police are out there fighting back and cracking down, you don't have the time or the space to create to get a ruling, to have the government agree and say, like, no, that is not correct. But with this lawsuit, that is what we're doing. We all have a responsibility and an obligation to each other and our communities to push back against these attempts to silence and censor the legitimate point of view that there's not just a history, but a current reality of racialized police violence in this country. And so I think the censorship that occurred in this case is just another example of a long history of an attempt to censor or sweep under the rug a very real problem that is plaguing our society. And the consequences of that, I think, very clearly just coalesce into the protests that we've seen.
Thank you, Matthew. We will now hear from Shannon Ligon.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm attorney Shannon Ligon, and I had the great experience to represent Raymond Herisse, or Herisse's family, and his mother and his sister, Marceline. That litigation took 5 years, and I feel the litigation that ACLU is now bringing on, I want to bring in context that their litigation is over a picture, and our 5-year journey protecting Raymond's name was over a picture. The city of Miami Beach appealed a case where our client was shot 116 times, 116 times, 116 times. And I always say that 3 times so it hits home about the amount of force and police brutality that went down on that day. And and when I was contacted by Octavia when the ReFrame artwork was taken down, myself as an artist and, you know, an artist advocate, I said, no, this is wrong. Something needs to be done. So here we are a year later, fighting a cause on the same issue over a picture. So in advocating for First Amendment rights, and not only for the respect and honor my client deserved, I'm so grateful to be a part of this and to protect the rights of artists and curators like Octavia, Jared, and Rock. It is so important that in this moment, we step up and advocate not only for the protection of artists, but for all people's rights that have been lost to police brutality and race relations. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Shannon. So we will take questions now. If you called into the briefing, you can press *6 to unmute your phone line and ask your question. If you're listening in over the computer, you can use the raise your hand function or ask to unmute, and I'll unmute your phone line so that you can ask your question. Once you're unmuted, we just ask that you tell us your name and what outlet you're calling from. So is there anyone on the line who would like to direct a question to one or all of our speakers?
Casey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, I don't know where the raise your hand button is.
No worries.
So this question would be, I'm Christian Villarosa with Local 10 News. This question would be directed towards Ms. Yearwood and Mr. Jackson and maybe even Mr. McGriff. Can you speak to me about the process that you guys went through with the city as far as the artwork? Did it have to be pre-approved? Was it looked at before it went up? Can you talk to us a little bit about that process?
Yeah, most definitely. So when the city came to us, they actually came to us within a 6-week frame, meaning that 6 weeks from the time that they came to us was when it was going to be when the exhibition would need to be up. 2 weeks into that, we weren't even able to get, funding to start moving the work and getting the work done. So essentially, we had 4 weeks to come up with, to put up the work, because we conceptualized it and had it already ready to go. And we also had all of the people that we were going to be working with ready to go. When we didn't actually get into the exhibition space to put up the exhibition until the day the exhibition was meant to be open. So opening day was when we got into the exhibition space, and we got into the exhibition space at 1:30 p.m. and the exhibition was supposed to open up to the public at 6:30. If you know anything about production, it's quite impossible to put up a full exhibition in an empty space in 5 hours. Throughout that time frame, we were very much on their backs to get up the space, because we knew that we needed more time. We needed all the time that we could have, especially with 4 weeks, to get things together. We did work with the Bath Museum and the FIU Miami Beach Museum as well as a couple of other artists. So the process was very, very much rushed, but like rushed in the sense that we were rushed. We felt the need to get it done quickly, but the city really dragged along that process. So yeah, that was, and Jared, you can add on to that because I'm pretty sure I'm not something.
Sure. So, Christian, in our contract, there was no agreement for the city to evaluate specific works and specific installations. We agreed on the overall theme, and the installations that would be party to the overall exhibitions, the overall program that we created, but there was no agreement for us to allow someone else who in the city's organization to evaluate specific works of art. So the way that this happened, interesting in that, in my view, the exhibition itself was criminalized in that we were not allowed the courtesy of a dialogue. Someone who we don't know to this day surreptitiously documented the works in that specific exhibit and reported that to the city manager. That's our understanding now, and decisions were made without a dialogue. So there was an assumption, it seemed as if there was an assumption that something be wrong and something would need to be reported to someone that wasn't us, and the dialogue did not occur, and the work was requested to be removed. So that's kind of the overall the cadence of how this happened.
And when I was approached about the work being removed, I asked for them to go back to the city manager and the police chief, which they told me, but we spoke to the police chief, and the police chief didn't even know that this was going on. But I told them to go back to those people, whoever it was, and ask them if we could then facilitate a panel discussion within the exhibition, where we would talk about the piece and talk about the relationship and have a public dialogue as opposed to what they were suggesting. And when they got back to me, saying that that wasn't going to be a thing that could be done right now, that they could possibly talk about that in the future, but immediately what would need to happen would be one of the two things: whether the piece would need to be removed or the exhibition will be closed.
I just had one more question for Mr. Jackson or anyone that might want to step in. You know, for members of the public who have never seen the art piece and maybe, you know, listening to your conversation, they would think that at the very least, this would be an art piece that was maybe extremely graphic, you know, or that would depict violence. This is like a portrait. This is his face. Yep. So how do you even begin to explain how this could be unacceptable or offensive to anybody? How do you explain that?
That is a very good question. I myself could not understand it. I think South Florida, Miami specifically, is so used to young black males being criminalized on the evening news that the simple image of a young black male is criminal. And I think because it pointed to a incident that embarrassed or infuriates the police department, the city probably felt that this was a criminal image and it needed to be taken down.
I think that, as Rodney mentioned, that this decision only becomes rational when you look at it in the context and the continuum of how Black people have been treated on Miami Beach through history. This is not an isolated event where Black folks are policed and monitored and surveilled physically. The same thing occurred in the idea space within our exhibit. So I think that's another way to kind of look at what happened and to see how this could be offensive. I mean, the fact that Black people are exhibiting their ideas and exercising their agency is offensive to some people. And I think that's what occurred here.
Yeah, I agree with both what they said, but I also want to add to that, the piece was truly just a libation to them. It was an honor, like they said, a memorial. And what was actually shown in the description card was that the incident caused policy to be shifted. And I think too, it plays to the power of when you don't allow something to happen, and you don't allow it to move in the way it does, that justice could be served, even if it does take 5 years like it did for the family or whatever it is. And those things, the truth is uncomfortable, you know, and that's what I think also is what it boiled down to.
And then just my final question, what is it that the lawsuit seeks?
You want a lawyer's answer?
Yes,
There's a section at the end, request for relief, and it asks for two things. One, an injunction. Well, three things. One, a declaration by the court that the defendants' acts were a violation of the First Amendment. Secondly, an injunction that orders the city to give Rodney's painting of Herisse the same thing would have gotten during Memorial Day weekend, namely a comparable venue and a comparable period of time. And third, for all of the clients, this has been an emotionally stressful series of events, has caused them a good deal of emotional suffering. It has harmed their reputations, and we are seeking an amount of damages to be determined after a jury trial.
thank you.
Thank you, Christian. I saw that Sarah from ArtNet News also had a question, so I'm just going to read it. It's directed to you, Rock. Were you surprised that your piece was censored, and what was your initial reaction?
My initial reaction is that I was stunned, and then I slowly became outraged because I just really could not understand how an image that was meant to memorialize someone could be offensive, especially since the Miami Beach settled with the family. It's not even like you could even say that I was memorializing a criminal or something of that nature. So it just really did not make any sense.
Are there any other, thank you, Sarah, for your question. Are there any other questions? You can press *6 to unmute your line. or like Sarah, drop your question into the chat and I'll read it to everyone. You can also raise your hand and I'll unmute your phone line as well.
Casey, could I ask a question just because I've gotten asked this so much? Rock, the halo around Raymond's face, what is that representative of? Because I've often got asked, does the halo and ray effect represent the 116 shots around his head?
I think.
Or what was your artistic expression with that?
We considered the amount of bullets, yes. And I think loosely, we did really want some indication of numerics in the portrait, but I think more specifically, it is just representative of, you know, the light of a life was taken. And so we wanted to present the light or reintroduce the public to that light.
And also, this installation was 3 parts. So it was the image that you see here with the halo that you referenced, and then there are also candles that were organized in a triangle underneath the image, and that did correlate with the amount of bullets, and that there were 16 candles that were right in front of him. And while the police, released over 100 bullets that day and shot 4 other bystanders, one of whom currently has a bullet still close to his heart, there were 16 bullets that Raymond was struck with. And so there were 16 candles in a triangle formation under the image to kind of underscore that memorial to him.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question, Shannon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are there any other questions from anybody on the line? Please press *6 to unmute your phone line. So there's a question in the chat. I'm going to read it out to everyone. So it says, Miami Beach hosts the largest art fair in the country, Art Basel. Is there a message in this incident for the organizers and large galleries that participate in Art Basel? And I'll open it up to all of our speakers if you want to comment on that.
Well, I think if I was a gallery who was invited to Art Basel, I'd want to speak with my contact within the city to ensure that the works that I'm presenting during that fair are not censored. So in that way, yes, there's a message in this incident in that there are people within the city of Miami Beach who feel very comfortable censoring work that is for some reason unfavorable to them. So anyone who is working in a capacity of presenting artworks within Miami Beach is presented in a situation where there's information asymmetries, and there's someone who is unknown perhaps that might have an issue with the work that they present, especially if they're presenting work of Black artists.
Thank you, Jared. Are there any other questions before?
Could you repeat that, please, that question?
Oh, the question is, Miami Beach hosts the largest fair in the country, art fair in the country, Art Basel. Mm-hmm. Is there a message in this incident for the organizers and large galleries that participate in Art Basel? Are there any other questions? Okay. So I just wanted to thank everyone for their time and thank you for joining us for our press conference today. This concludes our press conference. So for those who might have missed this reminder earlier, we can work with you after the call if you're interested in doing any follow-up interviews with any of our clients or the attorneys on this case, or work with you for a quote on your story. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us, and feel free to reach out for additional questions or comments. Thank you so much.